Hello again, folks, and welcome back to Max's Cards and Dice Dugout, episode 21. Robert Max here. Hope everyone's doing well. And as you can see, I finally got around to mounting the race grid for Downey Games Fast Action Racing. So I thought it was about time we get this 1991 NASCAR season underway. And of course, the first race will be at Daytona. I just mounted this on I printed out the four quadrants on cardstock and mounted them on a piece of poster board. Not the prettiest thing, but it is functional. Now, before we get started, I am a Downey Games enthusiast, but I gotta say, the rules to this game, if I had any criticism about this game, the rules, I think, need to be re-edited. There's some contradictory things that are said in the rules, so I've had to incorporate some house rules to straighten things out, at least in my mind. And there are these three types of lapped markers: green, red, and yellow. It talks about them a bit in there, but it doesn't really clarify on when you use each type. So I've kind of made some house rules up for that. And also, sometimes when it refers to die rolls, it looks at the die rolls like from two different perspectives. Instead of it always being looking at the die roll, sometimes it looks at the rating of the driver's card, and it just was a little bit confusing. So I made up this this little racing events cheat sheet for myself that I'll use during the game. Another thing, if you watch the first video, not the first video for the channel, but the video where I introduced this game, I said I only had 32 drivers because of the modifications I made to the cards. You know, I kind of spruced them up a little bit with the actual car colors from that year. I ended up adding another 4 drivers, so the grid will be completely full when we get started. Okay, so the first thing you do is I'm going to shuffle these driver cards, and the first thing you do is place them on the grid. Now, this grid is not a representation of the, race leader and the track position of all the cars, unlike something like Red, White, and Blue Racing, where when you're looking at the grid, you're actually seeing who's in what position. This is sort of like I don't know, the best way to describe it is like an abstraction of car positions. You have these 3 different, the rules refer to them as grooves. You have a top, middle, and bottom groove. And that really only comes into play at the end of the race when you're determining who won and how everyone else finished. So the first thing I'm going to do is put the cards out, or the drivers out. So we got Stanley Smith, Bobby Hillin Jr., Jeff Bodine, Hut Strickland, Harry Gant, Kyle Petty, Chad Little, Dale Jarrett, Jimmy Means, Lake Speed, Jimmy Spencer, Berwick, Pennsylvania's own Jimmy Spencer, Mickey Gibbs, Sterling Marlin, Rusty Wallace, Rick Mast, Dave Marcus, Ted Musgrave, Richard Petty, Joe Rootman, Bobby Hamilton, Bill Elliott, Mark Martin, Morgan Shepherd, Ernie Irvin, Ricky Rudd. I'm doing this like this. It really doesn't matter where you place these drivers. I'm just doing it randomly like this. Dale Earnhardt Jr., Darrell Waltrip, Derek Cope, Brett Bodine, Ken Schrader, Michael Waltrip, Larry Pearson, Terry Labonte, Davey Allison, Rick Wilson, and Alan Kowicki. All right, so we got our field set. Now, the first thing you'll do is, let me find one card here. We'll look at Sterling Marlin's. This little box here that has a 31 and 32, that means he has the potential to be a pole sitter. Not all the drivers have that. So the first thing we do is we take 2 die, and we're going to read the red as the first digit and the white as the second digit, and we're going to find out who the pole sitter is. Okay, so we rolled a 14. So that was a 4. We rolled a 14. So we're going to look for the driver that has 14 in his pole rating, and he will be the pole sitter for the race. And that's Davey Allison. Okay. Now, in this game, there is some bookkeeping, a decent amount of bookkeeping in this game. On this score sheet, so you'll have to bear with me on that. But so we're going to put down Davey Allison as the pole sitter, and then right off the bat, there's going to be a challenge to see who ends up leading the first lap. So Allison is the pole sitter. So the way we determine the challenger is we roll these 2 die, the red and the white, and we refer to the grid to find another driver, and he's going to present a challenge to Davey Allison right off the bat, okay? So here we go. We rolled a red 3 and a white 2. That's Morgan Shepherd. So Morgan Shepherd's going to challenge right off the bat here. Oops, and I've written that down here on the sheet. Okay, so we look at Morgan Shepherd's race rating, which is an 11. And Davey Allison also has an 11. Now, I didn't mention this about the track card. You have this track card. Use this quality pass matrix to determine whether or not a challenge is successful or not. So Morgan Shepherd's going to be challenging at a 0. So he needs to roll a 7 to 12. If he does, he becomes the race leader. All right, and one other thing I didn't mention is a couple of the checks you do in this game, mainly contact and mechanical, are modified by the track. In this case, it's both a -1. So there's a higher chance on this track for contact or a mechanical problem than maybe, some other tracks. All right, so the first thing anyway is Morgan Shepherd challenging for the lead, and he needs to roll a 7 to 12. He rolls a 6, so he fails that challenge. 7 to 12 he needed. He rolled a 6, and that was a fail. And so the race leader is Davey Allison. Okay, so that's what I have here. Shepherd challenged. The differential was 0. Target was 7 to 12. He rolled a 6. The outcome was a fail. So Davey Allison is the race leader. Okay, so the way this works is you have these various phases of the race. The first one we're going to have is this mechanical check. And then between each of these phases, you'll have challenges for the lead. Okay, so the mechanical check, we're going to look at the red mechanical failure avoidance rating of the racers. The first thing we'll do is we roll the die. We get a random driver and then 4 adjacent. And I'll show you how that works. Okay, so it's a red 4 and a white 2. It's Harry Gant. So it's going to be Harry Gant and 4 other drivers that are adjacent to him doing this first challenge, okay? And Harry Gant's mechanical rating is, an 11. Okay, now the way they say, Downey games say the adjacent works is you go to 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, and in that priority. So it's Harry Gant, Ernie Irvin, and he's a 10. Dale Earnhardt, and he is a 9. Morgan Shepherd, he's a 6. Now he's the race leader, so if he has a problem here, we're going to have a new race leader. And Bobby Hamilton. Okay, and Shepherd is a 6. And Hamilton's an 8. Okay, so when you do this roll, if the we're going to roll the black die, and if the roll is equal to the mechanical rating, the race driver's lapped. He's had a mechanical problem, has to go behind the wall, and he's going to be down. He's going to be out of the race for a while, so he's going to be several laps down. If it's greater than his rating, he has to actually retire from the race. The mechanical problem takes him out. Okay, so the first one we're going to check is Harry Gant. He has an 11, and we roll a 6, so he's good. He passes. He's a pass. Next is Ernie Irvin. Ernie Irvin is a 10. And he rolls an 8. So he passes. Now we got the race leader. No, excuse me. Davey Allison is the race leader. We got Morgan Shepherd. He's a 6. He rolls a 7, and he fails. And not only does he fail, but he's out of the race. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. That should have been Dale Earnhardt. Okay, so that's a 6 for Earnhardt, and he's good. Now it's Morgan Shepherd. He rolls an 11. Now, an 11 is higher than his mechanical rating, and that forces him to retire. So he's out of the race already, Morgan Shepherd is. I said he was the race leader, but that wasn't true. He rolls an 11, fail, did not finish. And the last challenge is Bobby Hamilton. Bobby Hamilton is an 8. He rolls an 8. Now, that's equal to his mechanical rating, so that means he's lapped. And he gets a red marker. He has had to go behind the wall early on in this race. And he's already out of contention. So that was a fail and a lap marker, and it's red. Okay, and so Davey Allison remains the leader. Now you have to excuse my penmanship because I'm doing this on my knee. I'm on my knees. So anyway, here's what we got so far. So Davey Allison was a pole sitter. He led coming out for the first lap. And after this mechanical event, he's still a leader. So now we're going to have another challenge. So we will roll the red and white die. And we have a 2-4. That's Lake Speed. So Lake Speed is going to challenge Davey Allison. And we look at the green race rating for challenges. And where's Lake Speed? He's a 6. Davey Allison is 11. That's a -5. A -5 on the quality pass matrix tells you it's an automatic failure. On a -5, it's a failure. He stays on the lead lap. If it was anything greater than that, he would have been a lap down and he would have gotten a green lap marker. So there's no the difference doesn't matter. Well, the difference is a -5. Target doesn't matter. It's an automatic failure, and Davey Allison still remains the race leader. Okay, so now this next phase is a period of green flag racing. There's no problems, there's no accidents, there's no cautions. And for this part, we take a random driver and the 4 drivers adjacent to that random driver, and they go up against the leader, Davey Allison. So we'll check the random driver, and that's a 5-1. That's Jeff Bodine. Okay, so it's Jeff Bodine. And we're going to look at the 4 adjacent drivers to Jeff Bodine. So 12 o'clock is Bill Elliott. He's a 9. 3 o'clock is Ernie Irvin. He's a 10. Or an 11, excuse me. Bill Elliott's also an 11. I'm looking at the wrong rating. And so is Jeff Bodine. So we got 3 11s. And Well, we can't do Bobby Hamilton because he's lapped down several laps. So what we do is we take the adjacent driver to him that has the highest rating, and that looks like it's going to be Harry Gant. So it's Harry Gant, and he's also an 11. And the 9 o'clock, since there is, he's on the edge of the board, we go all the way over. It's like if you kind of go under the board, and it's Alan Kulwicki over here, and he is also an 11. So all 5 of these challenges are going to be at 0. So Alan Kulwicki, he's an 11, and they all need 7 to 12 to be successful on their challenge. Now, if they are successful and become the race leader, the following challenges in this phase will be against the new race leader. All right, so first up will be Jeff Bodine. So he needs a 7 to 12. He rolls a 7, so he takes the lead. 7, pass. Jeff Bodine has the lead. Okay, well, since they're all 11s, it really isn't going to matter. So now it's Bill Elliott going up against Jeff Bodine, and he also needs a 7 to 11. He rolls a 6, so that's a fail. He fails, and he gets lapped. He actually goes down. The way the rules state this is that he wasn't actually trying to take the lead. He was trying to stay on the lead lap. So he fails, and he's lapped green, and Jeff Bodine is still the leader. So Bill Elliott gets a green lap marker. Now, a green lap marker, if he comes up in a challenge again, he can challenge with that green lap marker, and if he would be successful, he would get his lap back. All right, so next is Ernie Irvin, who's also an 11. So he needs a 7 to 12. He rolls an 8, so he's the new leader now. So Irvin rolls an 8. He passes, and he's the leader. And he was the winner in the real Daytona 591. Okay, so the next challenge is coming from Harry Gant. Once again, a 0. He needs an 11. He gets a 7 to 12, excuse me. He gets a 7, so he passes, and he's the new race leader. And that's Gant. And finally, Alan Kulwicki over here. Once again, 0 difference, 7 to 12. He gets an 11, and he's the new race leader. So we had several lead changes during this green flag racing period. And that's Alan Kulwicki, and he is the new race leader. Okay, so the next phase is a round of green flag pit stops. And once again, we will check a random driver for adjacent against the leader. So the leader now is Alan Kulwicki. So we'll roll the red and white die, and we get a 3-3. So 3-3 is Dale Jarrett. Okay, so it's going to be Dale Jarrett. You can see there's quite a bit of paperwork. And in this phase, you're looking at the blue pit crew rating. So he's a 7. And let's see. 12 o'clock is Dale Earnhardt. And he is a 10. 12 o'clock, Dale Earnhardt. 3 o'clock is Brett Bodine. He's a 7. 6 o'clock is Ricky Rudd. And he is a 9. And finally, at 9 o'clock, we go all the way over to Bobby Hillman Jr. He's a 7. Okay, and just like the previous phase, you can have several lead changes during these green flag pit stops. Okay, so the first one is Dale Jarrett. He is a 7. And Alan Kulwicki is an 8. So Dale Jarrett's going to be rolling at a -1. So on a -1, he needs an 8 to 12 to be successful. He rolls a 4, so he's failed. But he stays on the lead lap because it's he wasn't less than 5. So he fails on his 4, and Kulwicki remains the leader. Okay, so Dale Jarrett. Next is Dale Earnhardt. Now Dale Earnhardt is a 10. Alan Kulwicki is an 8. So he's rolling at a +2. He needs a 5 to 12 to be successful. He rolls a 5. So we have a new race leader, Dale Earnhardt. Okay, so now Brett Bodine is going to be going up against Dale Earnhardt. So Bodine's a 7, Earnhardt's a 10. That makes him a -3. He needs a 10 to 12 to be successful, and he rolls an 8, so he fails. Oh, that's a fail. And it's still Earnhardt. All right, the next one is Ricky Rudd. Ricky Rudd is a 9. Earnhardt's a 10. He's rolling at a +1, or excuse me, a -1. And that's an 8 to 12. And he rolls a 10. So we have a new race leader in Ricky Rudd. Okay, so now Bobby Hillin will be going up against Ricky Rudd, the new race leader. Rudd's a 9. Hillin is a 7. It's a -2. He needs a 9 to 12. And he rolls an 11. So Bobby Hillin Jr. is the new race leader. Okay, so now the next phase is a penalty phase to see if anyone had any pit stop infractions or anything. So the way this phase works, it's a random driver and 4 racers. So it doesn't include the leader. It's just, it could include the leader, but it doesn't, these challenges or these checks do not go up against the leader. They go up against your pit rating, which is the blue number, okay? So we're going to pick a random driver, and we get a red 4 and a 6. It's going to be Ted Musgrave. Okay, so it's Ted Musgrave. And he's an 8. It's pit crew rating. Alan Kulwicki. And he's an 8. We have to go all the way over here. Bobby Hamilton. And it says in the rules, during this penalty phase, yellow or red lap drivers, if they're selected for this, they get black flagged and they're out of the race. So he had a serious infraction. He was black flagged, and he is removed from the race. Okay, and he was the 3 o'clock driver. So we have 2 racers out so far. Okay, so that was Hillin, and he's out. Okay, so Rick Wilson is the 6 o'clock, and he is a 7. And Larry Pearson is the 9 o'clock, and he's a 4. Okay, so what we do in this phase is, if the die is lower or equal to the pit rating, no infraction. If the dice is higher, he's called back in for a stop and go and ends up being a lap down. Okay, so the first one we're going to check is Ted Musgrave. He needs an 8 or lower, and he rolls a 10, so he's failed. And he's going to go a lap down, so I need to get a green marker for him. It's Ted Musgrave, so he's a lap down. All right, next one is Alan Kulwicki. He's also an 8. He needs an 8 or lower. He rolls a 9, so he goes from leader to being a lap down now because he had an infraction. All right, so the next one It's Bobby Hillin Jr. And he's a 7, so he needs a 7 or lower. He rolls a 6, so he passes. Or excuse me, he's not Bobby Hillin Jr. Oh yeah, it was Bobby Hillin Jr. Okay, I made a mistake there. Not Bobby Hamilton. Bobby Hamilton remains red lapped. It's Bobby Hillin. I looked at the... Oh no, I'm sorry. I was right. It wasn't Bobby Hillin. It was Bobby Hamilton. I was looking over incorrectly. Okay, anyway, we got that straightened out. All right, so he was already out. And the next check is Rick Wilson. He needs a 7 or less. He rolls a 7, so he's good. And he passes. And Larry Pearson's the last one. He needs a 4 or less. And he rolls snake eyes, so he survives that. All right, so pass. And Bobby Hillin Jr. is still the leader. Okay, so now he's going to face another challenge. And we do that with the random die. We got a 2, 4. That's coming from Lake Speed. We look at the green race rating. Lake Speed is a 6. Bobby Hillin is a 10. And that's going to be a -4, which is an 11 to 12. So it's going to be difficult for him to do this, but he needs an 11 or 12. That's Lake Speed to take the lead. He rolls an 8. So he fails. And Bobby Hillin remains the leader. Bobby Hillin Jr. Okay, now we have a contact check. And the way this works is you take a random driver and 4 adjacent. That random driver has been rubbed, and we see if any contact causes any racers to have to exit the race. Now, this is modified by the contact modifier at a -1. So all of these ratings are going to be a -1 in this phase. Okay, so we got a 4-4. That's Jimmy Spencer. Okay, now we look at his yellow rating. His is listed as a 7, but he's going to be a 6. He's a 6. Then it's Ken Schrader at 12 o'clock. He's an 8. Larry Pearson. He is a 6. Or excuse me, a 4. Brett Bodine is an 8. And Dale Earnhardt is an 11. Okay. So here's what happens. We're going to roll the die. If the die roll is lower than the contact rating, the driver's safe. If it's equal to the contract rating, he's lapped, and he'll be down with the yellow lap marker. He's down a few laps because, he had to come in for some repairs. And if the die is greater than the contact rating, he's forced to retire. Damage was too much to stay in the race. Okay, so Jimmy Spencer needs less than a 6. He rolls a 7. So 7 is higher than his contact rating, and he's out. He's taken out in an accident. All right, so that's Spencer. He's out. Fail. Out. Now Ken Schrader. Ken Schrader has an 8. It's reduced to a 7. So he needs a lower than a 7. He rolls an 11. He's out. So Spencer and Schrader get involved in an accident, and they're both out of the race. Okay, next would be Larry Pearson. Now he's a 4. That's reduced to a 3. He needs Snake Eyes to stay in the race, and he rolls a 7. He's out. So 3 drivers were collected so far in this accident. Now Brett Bodine. He's an 8. He needs a 7 or less. Or excuse me, he needs less than a 7. He rolls an 8 and he's out. So this was a pretty bad accident. So Bodine is out. And lastly, Dale Earnhardt. He's an 11. It's reduced to a 10. So he needs less than a 10. And he rolls a 12. And he's out. So we had an accident that took out 4 drivers. So no chance for Dale Earnhardt winning this race. And Bobby Hillin continues to lead. Okay, so now we're going to have a round of pit stops under caution due to this wreck. And the way that works, it's a random driver and 4 adjacent, and they go up against the leader. But you'll only have 1 leader at the end of this phase. This is like, the ins and outs of a pit stop under caution. Okay, so the first thing we do is we check for a random driver. And we have a 6-5. So it's a 6-5. It's Terry Labonte. Now, his 12 o'clock would be Sterling Marlin. Terry Labonte's a 7. Sterling Marlin is an 8. And Terry Labonte's 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock is Richard Petty. Richard Petty's an 8. Pit crew rating. Rick Mast is also an 8. He's the 6 o'clock position. He's an 8. And the 9 o'clock is Mickey Gibbs. He's a 7. Okay, so once again, we use the matrix going up against the leader. All right, so the leader is Bobby Hillin Jr. He's a 7. So the first check is Terry Labonte. He's a 7. So he needs a 7 to 12 to become the new race leader. He rolls a 3, so he passes. And he's the new race leader. All right, so now Sterling Marlin is going to go up against Terry Labonte. Sterling Marlin's an 8. Terry Labonte's a 7. So he's going at a +1. He needs a 6 to 12. He rolls a 6. So Sterling Marlin passes, and he's the new race leader. So now Richard Petty, they're both 8s. Marlin and Petty are both 8s. Excuse me, that's a difference of 0. Richard Petty needs a 7 to 12. He rolls a 5, and he's the new race leader. So this is all happening, as the pit stops are going on, just like you'd see in a normal race. Okay, now, excuse me, allergies. Rick Mast. They're both 8s, Richard Petty and Rick Mast. Rick Mast needs 7 to 11. He rolls a 5, and now he's leading the race. And the final check is Gibbs. And where the heck is Gibbs? Mickey Gibbs. He's a 7. So he's at a -1. He needs an 8 to 12 to be successful. And he rolls a 4. So he fails. Okay, and so he goes a lap down. And that's a green lap marker. Like I said, the green lap markers, they can still challenge because they can challenge to get their lap back. So that's Mickey Gibbs. He's a lap down. All right. So he failed. He goes a lap down. And Rick Mast is the new race leader. Okay, so now we have another one of those regular challenges, which is just one random driver going up against the current race leader. All right, so we have a 1-4. 1-4 is empty. So we roll again. We have a 4-5. And that's empty. Then we're going to roll again. We had that accident that took out 4 drivers. Right? We have a 5-5. So 5-5 is Rick Mast. Well, he can't challenge himself, so we have to roll again. All right, we have a 1-3. Okay, it's Bobby Hillen Jr., who had the lead earlier. He's going to challenge. Hillen. And Bobby Hillen Jr. is a 10. Rick Mast is a 9. It's a +1. So he needs a 6-12 to become the new race leader. All right, so 6-12. Bobby Hillen's in the lead again. He rolls an 11. So he has the lead. So Bobby Hillen Jr. is the race leader once again. Okay, now we're going to check to see if there's a mechanical issue. And this is only against the race leader in this phase. This is the closing phases of the race. So we look at the last highlight event table. Mechanical. There will be a mechanical check on a roll of 9-12. He rolls an 11, so there is going to be a mechanical check. So the way that works is, once again, if the dice is equal to his mechanical rating, he's lapped. If it's greater than his mechanical rating, he's forced to retire. Now, mechanical is at a -1 here on this track. Bobby Hillen's mechanical rating is a 7, which means it's going to be a 6. So I need to mark that down. Hillen is a 6. So he needs lower than a 6 to avoid having a mechanical issue. And he rolls a 10. So he's actually out of the race. He rolls a 10. And the mechanical issue is enough to force him to retire. So we need to determine a new race leader. The way you do that is you take the adjacent drivers. Whoever has the highest rating becomes the new race leader. Okay, so it's Bobby Hillen. His 12 o'clock is Jeff Bodine. He's an 11. His 3 o'clock is Rick Wilson. He's an 8. So right now it's Bodine. Rootman is his, or excuse me, I'm wrong about that. His 3 o'clock is Dale Jarrett. That's still Bodine. His 6 o'clock is Joe Rootman. He's a 9. It would still be Bodine. And his 9 o'clock is Rick Wilson. He's an 8. Jeff Bodine is an 11. So Jeff Bodine is the new leader. And Bobby Hillen is forced to retire due to a mechanical issue. I could roll the die to see what that is. Yeah, sure, let's do it. Well, it's only one die. He rolls a 5 and cut tire. Or excuse me, he ran out of gas. Eugh. Bad pit crew decisions. Okay, so I meant to put this on the race leader, and I didn't do it. Okay, so we have a new race leader in Jeff Bodine. And right off the bat, he has to face a challenge. So we roll the red and white die. And that's coming from a 3, 4. There is no 3, 4. Roll again. That's a 5, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's no 5, 4. We've had a lot of drivers out in this race. A 5, 4 again. 2, 2. Hut Strickland. So Hut Strickland's going to challenge Jeff Bodine for the race lead. Okay, and Hut Strickland's race rating is an 11. Jeff Bodine is an 11. So it's going to be at 0 on the matrix. So he needs a 7-12 to be successful. He rolls a 6, so he fails. And the way that's described in the rules is if he fails this challenge, he wasn't trying to take the lead, but trying to stay on the lead lap. So he fails and gets a green lap marker, and Jeff Bodine remains the leader. Okay, so we got to put a green lap marker on Hut Strickland. There he is. Okay. All right, so now we have to check to see if there's any contact in the closing phases. On a roll of a 7 to 12, there is contact. You roll a 5, so there is no contact. No contact. So that doesn't happen. That phase doesn't happen. We don't have any pit stops under caution because there wasn't any contact. We go right down to another challenge. So we roll the random die, and we get a 5-3. That's Jimmy Means. So Jimmy Means is going to challenge for the lead, or challenge to stay on the lead lap, depending on the situation. He's only a 2. Okay, so Jeff Bodine is an 11. That's a -8. It's greater than a -5, so that means he's automatically lapped. So there really wasn't any challenge there. So Jimmy Means gets a lap marker as well. All right. So that was a fail. And Jeff Bodine remains the race leader. Now we check to see if there's a green flag pit stop. We need a 9 to 12 for that to happen. Let me give Jeff Bodine his race leader marker here, this die. All right, so pit crew event for Daytona, it's a 9 to 12. We roll a 5, so that doesn't happen. So that's a no. Now we check for green flag racing. That's a 5 to 12. And that's a 4, so that's a yes. Okay. So Jeff Bodine will face a challenge now. And the way this works in the closing phases, we don't do the random roll. We do the leader, the adjacent drivers. Well, I shouldn't say we don't do a random roll, but the green flag racing at the end of the race is the leader, the adjacent drivers, and one random driver. Okay, so it's going to be it's going to be Bill Elliott, who's been lapped for a long time, but he could possibly get his lap back here. Bill Elliott, Ernie Irvan, Six o'clock is Joe Rootman. And the 9 o'clock is Alan Kowicki. He could get his lap back. And then we pick one random driver. That's a 3-4, which is an empty spot. 5-2. Ernie Irvan, he's already involved in this. 3-1. No 3-1. 5-6. 5-6 is Alan Kowicki. He's already involved in this. 5-4. That's an empty spot. Well, I found a part of this game that can be a little bit frustrating. Okay, it's Hut Strickland, who's a lap down. And he could possibly get his lap back. All right, so Bill Elliott is an 11. Jeff Bodine is an 11. He needs a 7 to 12 to get his lap back. He rolls a 12, so he's back on the lead lap. That's a pass. Okay, Ernie Irvan's also an 11. Now this will decide whether or not he stays on the lead lap or becomes the leader. So he needs also a 7 to 12. He gets an 8, so we got a new race leader. It's a pass. Now Joe Rootman is a 9 going up against an 11. He's a -2. He needs a 9 to 12. He rolls a 5 and he fails. So Joe Rootman is going to be lapped here at the end with a green lap marker. All right, next up is Alan Kulwicki. He's an 11. Ernie Irvin's an 11. So he needs a 7 to 12 to get his lap back. He rolls a 10. So Alan Kulwicki's back on the lead lap. Kulwicki's back on the lead lap. Kulwicki passes. He's back on the lead lap. And now it's Hut Strickland, same thing. He needs, Hut Strickland is an 11. He needs a 7 to 12 to get his lap back. He does not get his lap back. So he actually, and these green markers are cumulative. So he's actually 2 laps down now. So he fails. He gets lapped again, ×2. And Ernie Irvin is the new race leader. Huh. Okay, so now we have a final challenge against the new race leader, Ernie Irvin. We don't roll the die this time. This final challenge is the 4 drivers adjacent to the race leader. Whoever has the highest rating gets to be the challenger for the final challenge. Okay, well, Jimmy Means is lapped. So in this final challenge, he doesn't count. It can't be a lapped driver in the final challenge. It would go over to Rick Mast. So we got Kyle Petty with an 11, Rick Mast an 9, Harry Gant an 11, Jeff Bodine an 11. So it's going to be Kyle Petty because he has the highest priority, being at the 12 o'clock position. So it's going to be Kyle Petty. He's an 11. That means it's a 0 differential. He needs a 7 to 12 to win this race. So it's Ernie Irvin and Kyle Petty coming down. The green flag, or excuse me, the checkered flag is out and it's coming down to the finish line. And let's see, on a 7 to 12, Kyle Petty wins. Anything less than that, Ernie Irvin holds him off. And it's a 10. So Kyle Petty, on the final lap, coming down the stretch, passes Ernie Irvin, and he wins this race. How about that? It was almost the same as the actual Daytona 500. Ernie Irvin was the winner of that race in 1991. Okay, now here's the other part of this game. Excuse me. I can be a little bit confusing from the rules. We're going to determine the finishing order. Okay, of course, Kyle Petty wins the race. So he comes off first, if I can get his card. Okay, I'm going to keep this marker here, just so I know where Kyle Petty was. Okay? The person who lost the challenge, Ernie Irvin, finished second. Okay, now any of the other drivers adjacent that were eligible to be part of this final challenge, they're the next ones to finish in priority order. Okay, so he's the winner. Those other 4 drivers were Jeff Bodine, Harry Gant, and Alan Kulwicki, I believe. Let me look at my... Yes, okay. So going by priority, the next one would be Harry Gant. Oh, I'm sorry, not Alan Kulwicki, Rick Mast. Harry Gant, Jeff Bodine, and then Rick Mast, who was actually the 9 o'clock. Okay. So, we got that. Now, we look at drivers in the same groove who aren't lapped, starting at 12 o'clock, which would be here, going clockwise. We look for the highest rating. So that's going to be Darrell Waltrip. He's a 10-10. Alan Kowicki. 10-10. Davey Allison. Sterling Marlin. Mark Martin. Bill Elliott. Okay. So that's 11. So now we look for 10s. We got Terry Labonte. That's it. Now it's 9s. That would be, oh, he's lapped. 8s. Richard Petty. Rick Wilson. Chad Little. That's it for the 8s. And then 7s. Derek Cope. Now 6s. Dave Marcus. Lapped. We go all the way down to 2. Stanley Smith. Okay, so now we go to the next groove, and which would be this groove here, and it's non-lapped drivers going clockwise with the highest number. Okay, so the next one would be Rusty Wallace, Michael Waltrip, Ricky Rudd, Hut Strickland's lapped. So then we go down to Lake Speed, and that's it for the unlapped drivers in that groove. Now we go into the top groove. There's only one driver left. It's Dale Jarrett. All right, so now we go back out to the groove that the race winner was on, and we go lap drivers by priority. So that would be Joe Rootman. He was a 9. Mickey Gibbs was an 8. Ted Musgrave was a 7. So that's it for that priority. Now we move into the middle groove. There's only one driver there, but he's double lapped. I'm sorry, we got 2 drivers there. So the next one would be Jimmy Means. And then finally Hut Strickland. And then after that, we take the drivers who are retired, and they get placed in the bottom of the pile in order of how they retired. So there you have it. I'll just show you quickly your top 10 for this race. It was Kyle Petty 1, Ernie Irvan 2nd, Harry Gant 3rd, Jeff Bodine 4th, Rick Mast 5th, Darrell Waltrip 6th, Alan Kowicki 7, Davey Allison 8, Sterling Marlin 9, and Mark Martin 10. So what I'll do is off camera later on, I'll compile all the points, and have a standings for the next race. So you can see it was a fun game. It goes pretty quick. I probably could have gone quicker if I wasn't doing a lot of talking. But the only issue I have with it is the rules. The rules, I think, need to be re-edited, clarified a little bit better. But overall, it's a fun game. Like I said, I am a Downey Games enthusiast, especially time travel baseball. That's one of my favorite baseball tabletop sims to play. But anyway, race 1 is in the books. Daytona 500. Their winner, Kyle Petty. So that's going to do it for this episode. If you hung around this long, thanks. If you are a subscriber, thank you for that as well. If you're not a subscriber, I ask that you please consider doing so. And I'll be back again. Oh, don't forget to like the video. I'll be back again in the near future. And until then, take care.